Together we'll look at this week in Europe, and it was, I believe, a bad week for...
Unsurprisingly, for François Hollande, the French president, who saw his annual press conference largely overshadowed by revelations that he is reportedly conducting an illicit affair with a French actress. This was obviously terrible timing for Hollande, coming just days before a very important press conference, but it's also terrible timing for Europe. It's a bit of a cliche, but Europe depends on the Franco-German engine to drive its economy, and right now only half of that engine is working. So people working here in European policy are really desperately looking to France for some bold action to revive its economic fortune. Hollande was hoping to really have some new proposals on that, but it was largely overshadowed by the affair. And if this affair ends up really hobbling Hollande for the rest of his presidency, it would also hobble France and also hobble Europe. So whether they like it or not, Europeans' fortunes right now are very much tied up in the personal fortunes of François Hollande.
And on a more positive note, it was a good week for...
It was a good week for the European Parliament here in Strasbourg. The city of Strasbourg has been trying to collect 3 million euros in fees for garbage collection. And last week, a French court ruled that the Parliament does not have to pay these fees. The Parliament was saying that these fees constitute a tax. EU institutions do not have to pay tax in the countries which host them. And the court agreed with them. So the Parliament is off the hook for this 3 million euros, which is good news at a time of austerity and budget cutting. And anyone who works here in Strasbourg knows that this building generates a lot of garbage, so it's good news.
Should be closed down. It's not good news if it means keeping Strasbourg alive, isn't it?
Many MEPs feel that way.
That's another debate. That's another debate whether all sessions should be held in Brussels. Do you agree that it was a bad week for Hollande? Because some of the French commentators saw a turning point in this presidency. François Hollande turning into a social democrat. Is that your perception?
Well, certainly good news for the croissant business. I think croissants have raised their profile in the UK in the morning. I personally have no interest in the private sex life of the President of France, but I have an interest in French economic prosperity, and I think that the socialist hardline model of very high taxes is not working. He needs to inject growth back into the economy, create jobs, reduce taxation. And if this galvanizes the president to having a new economic paradigm for France, I welcome it. Many of the wealthier French have been talking about the immigration debate again. Many of the wealthier French have come to live in London to escape French taxes. So, you know, if France wants to maintain its sort of wealthy class investing money, creating jobs, it needs to basically look at its economic model, its socialist economic model.
You're not going to cap wealthy French coming to London?
No, we're not. We welcome them, yes.
You welcome those wealthy French. Now, what about your front page at European Voice this week?
The front page this week featured an article detailing Catherine Ashton, who is the foreign policy chief of the EU's choice to have a bureaucrat serve as the next EU ambassador to the United States rather than a politician. Word is that she's chosen David O'Sullivan, who is a former Secretary General of the European Commission.
With TTIP, I suppose the argument would be it's such a technical process of organising and monitoring the negotiations. You need somebody who really understands trade technicalities.
Yes, certainly it's probably an indication of the priorities between the two sides at the moment.
OK, Dave Keating, Ivailo Kalfin, Charles Tannock, thank you very much for taking part in this edition of Talking Europe.